primary farming thing, and so we have a lot of extra that we have taken down from where we have chickens in the summer, rotating pasture. So we're just going to put that around our garlic bed until the ground freezes, and then they can't dig them up anymore.
Right.
And then we'll put it back up in the spring. It's a solar.
Oh, solar.
Solar.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
And it really doesn't work well in winter,
Somehow I
but
think
we
when
won't.
I put that
When
up
the
there,
ground's
it just
frozen
did that.
and everything is covered,
Right.
we won't need it as much.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and it also keeps other critters out, and it keeps the deer out. Even though they could jump over it, they go up and they smell it first to see what it is, and it'll give them a little shock, and then they won't jump over it. Not that in the summer that'll be
That one
you
do.
know, like frogs.
Yeah, we don't have deer problems, but we,
Clavinova or.
maybe I should
Clavinova,
put
maybe, I
an
think.
electric fence around the whole thing.
Microphone, yeah.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
We have squirrel problems all the time.
And we have squirrels and rabbits and
They didn't
birds.
used to
Like,
eat tomatoes, but this past year or so
Oh,
they
they
started
don't eat
eating
my tomatoes
tomatoes.
this year. And, you know, they do the same thing with my apples and everything else. They eat like a few bites and leave the rest. And that's what's so aggravating. Would you eat the whole thing at least?
Hi, Jill. Good morning. How are you?
that's how I feel about raccoons and chickens. That they'll catch a chicken and they'll just eat a couple bites, and it's like, and they'll kill another one. I'm like, okay, well, I'll donate one to you, but could you just not waste it? Come on.
Yeah. Eat it all?
How was your conference last weekend?
Oh, it was so great. This was the first conference where they offered a spirituality and farming course. That's why I was texting Kelly. I was so excited about it. And it was awesome. Although, the one thing that I would say is that after the first 15 minutes, everybody started turning to me and saying, what do you think? Because I was the only one that had any training in spirituality
Yeah.
formally. And I'm like, I'm here to learn, guys. This is my day off. But it was really awesome. It was so great talking about the spirituality,
Lighting candle.
why we do organic agriculture and restorative agriculture.
Where was it?
It was in Minneapolis.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, and it was at a surprise Lutheran church, but they host it every year, and it was over in St. Anthony.
Hi, Carrie.
Did I get that right?
Good morning.
At least my
Yeah.
pool doesn't look like, it looks like that again.
We're gonna get spoiled with these cushy seats for church.
Tell me about it.
Oh, it's closed. Well, the color didn't change though.
Carrie, we
Same
watched,
color as the
we
water.
tried to watch Sacred, one of the films on your list that I got from Interlibrary Loan. And the
Kept
DVD
skipping.
kept skipping and messing up and
Freezing.
and after about not even, maybe
45
30 minutes, maybe, we gave up on it. So,
Yeah.
but I had requested it before we knew that we were doing Inside Out, so I just kept the request just to try it out. And so we watched it just to see if it would be something we'd want, but not if it's gonna skip. It's such a pain, yeah. It was such a pain.
And it's got a lot of subtitles,
Yeah,
and it's not much narration. It's kind of, you're just experiencing these different rituals and stuff in the different, and so it's a little bit slow,
yeah,
It doesn't hold their attention.
not greatly.
Hey, guys, when are we doing it? When are we doing that?
yeah.
That special, when is that?
When is what?
When are we doing that?
Doing what?
Be quiet.
Oh,
She's talking to me. She's talking to me.
never mind. We got it figured out.
Who's on first?
Yes, exactly.
I don't know who's out third.
At the end,
We could do that.
or
At-
joys and concerns?
Oh, that's an idea. Hi, Alice. World traveler.
I forgot.
Forgot what?
Didn't went over to gift week.
Oh, shoot.
Alice went over to the church.
Oh, darn.
Could bring the scene wall.
Shoot. You guys, did you do
Are we
that
ready?
thing?
Sure, I'm ready.
Easy to do.
We just took off from our house a
Wasn't
bit
that
late.
the name of the dog on, that woman, that really wealthy woman on all creatures, great and small? Her dog's name was Trixie.
No, Tricky.
Tricky.
Tricky
That's
Woods.
it.
Yes.
Yes.
Tricky Woods will stop.
Okay, what am I doing?
Sing bowls down there, down.
Underneath.
Got it.
I'm just go back, ladies, I went. On the gathering song, I'm just gonna introduce the part of it, and then we'll sing it twice, number 4 or 3.
4 or 3. Well, that's yours. You got one. 4 or 3. Spirit of truth, of life, of power, we bring ourselves as gifts to thee. Oh, bind our hearts this sacred hour, in faith and hope and charity. Spirit of truth, of life, of power, we bring ourselves as gifts to thee. Oh, bind our hearts this sacred hour, in faith and hope and charity.
It's a little harder to get up out of this chair. Good morning. And welcome to everyone who's joined us in person, and welcome to everyone who's joined us online. We're glad that you're here. My name is Bryan. For those of you who might not know me, those would probably be online. My pronouns are he, him, and we're going to get into a few announcements to begin with. The first, rather important announcement has been given to me right before the service, and that is if you need to use the restroom, go towards the kitchen and just beyond the buffet, turn left, and then go all the way down and turn left. And I was told that sometimes the front door hides the bathroom, so it is there. You just must search. And the presentation today is about searching, so that makes sense.
And if that one is in use, there's another one upstairs.
Oh, okay.
Again, just.
I don't know the directions to that one.
Just
Top
up
of the
there.
stairs.
You'll find it. If you go straight up the stairs and keep looking up, you'll see it.
Okay, I like it. Keep looking up. I love that. All kinds of lessons before church even starts. All right. Today I'm going to be doing a presentation on constructing our own theology, and you may have been exposed to this kind of stuff many times, but we'll have my take on it. And then next Sunday, the 26th of October, we're going to, I'm going to be here again, and we're going to really talk about the Earth-centered New Year, which is often called Samhain around Halloween, and talk about the relevance to climate change, environmentalism, and things like that to following Earth-centered traditions. And so those are the next couple of Sundays to look forward to. And I think that's all the announcements I have first, so I'll open it up to others.
Women's group, November 9th at my place, 10 o'clock.
My chorus mixed company is going to be performing at Beer Choir on Thursday at, well, just look at your MailChimp. I think it's in there. Otherwise, talk to me after if you're interested. It's a lot of fun. Everybody gets to sing for a while, and then we'll perform, and then everybody gets to sing some more. And you don't have to drink beer.
I don't drink beer, but I go
It's optional.
and have a good time.
I drink beer.
And this afternoon, 3 p.m. at Kings of Kings in Woodbury, my orchestra, East Metro Orchestra, is going to play there, and Bruce and I both going to play. So.
That's nice.
Nice.
I will interject a couple of more announcements while we see if anybody else has an announcement. One, I want to go ahead and mention this because I think we're sort of settled now on this. The third Friday in November, and I'm going to forget the date now because I just made this up. The 15th, we're going to start a venture of having a Friday evening service once a week. Once a week.
Once a month.
I need more coffee, Kathy. I will in a minute, maybe. We're going to try a once a month Friday service, and it's going to be really continuing the idea of earth-centered traditions. And one of the reasons we picked the third Friday is because the 4 main spokes of the wheel of the year are the equinoxes and the solstices, and they most often, almost always, fall somewhere near the third Friday of the month, and then the other times we will be close to the other spokes. So, for example, in November, we'll be not too far from the winter solstice. So that way it kind of flows. So we're going to give it a try. It's going to be more of an informal music / poetry service where we're going to come together and do experiential sort of things. I may say a few words, but not like I would during a Sunday service. So we're inviting everybody to join us who can, and invite others that might be interested in that kind of a service. And it will be at the Aslan Institute on Friday, the 15th of November. And then the next one will be the winter solstice, which I think is December the 20th. Service I think is December the 20th, but we'll get back to you on that. And the other thing, go ahead.
No, it should be the 20th.
Right, yeah, I think so. That's what I'm trying to do in my head. The other announcement is, I know I've mentioned it before, I'm working on rebuilding a website for us, and sometimes we meet our own limitations, and I realize that I'm a part-time minister and I've got a lot of stuff going on, and I really want to try to get it right. Part of that is, if anybody is interested in contributing pictures that you might have, and or if you want to look at the site, I can email you the temporary site. It's not published out to public yet, but you can go and look at it. And if you see parts that need to be reworded, I would love to have your feedback. This is the time to start doing that. What we noticed, I think Alice pointed it out at one time, there's artificial intelligence went in and built the site just so that there were places, and a lot of the things it says don't reflect our theology, and we want to go in and sort of put stuff in there. And I think that crowdsourcing that kind of information, since we are a community, and that includes people online. So just email me or talk to me today, and I will send you the email link that you can look at it if you're interested in doing that. All right, now I'm opening it back up for other announcements.
Know Your Neighbor is this Monday night
Yeah,
at Burnsville Education Center. We used to speak Diamond Head Mall, 7 o'clock.
and
Or is it
movie
6:30?
night, which one's movie night? The 4th Friday.
The 4th Friday, which will be the 22nd, I think.
Yeah.
25th.
No, sorry, I'm on the wrong
24th.
month. I'm back in November. Yeah,
24th.
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 And I have
Yeah.
flyers over there for my next concert
October the
in
24th.
December.
Is there? I can do that.
Because the Sunday's 26th, so.
No, Sunday's 27th, because today is.
See? So I was right.
Yes, I can't.
So,
It's
congregation,
right there.
just so you know, never trust me with numbers.
Or Chuck.
Or me.
I do words, not numbers, so.
It's Friday. We know
Friday
that.
the 25th.
The last Friday in
Next
October, I'll stick with that.
Friday.
If you have any
Next
other
Friday.
questions, see Kelly. Well, with that, what I'd like to do is invite everyone to take a deep, slow, gentle breath and try to rid yourself of the chaos of the world around you and center ourselves on this time and this place with this group, both in person and virtually, and let us meditate on this prelude. I invite you to remain seated and join me in our opening words and the lighting of the chalice. Spirit of life and of love, allow us to feel the elemental presence of grace that is at once immanent, transcendent, and between.
Let us give thanks for our abilities of passion and reason to be able to freely form the foundation of our religious home.
Let us know that we are in the beloved community, creating and opening a door to heaven here on earth.
Let us not seek to be sheltered from dangers, but rather to be healed by the power of creative love.
Let us live the covenant that we promise to each other to support and care for our community within this group and beyond.
Let us be good neighbors to those outside our windows, allowing ourselves to be moved and changed by them.
We hope that we make of our lives blessings worthy of our meeting space, fellowship, and commitment to making the world a better place.
May it be so.
Therefore, in the spirit of covenant, commitment, and promise, we light this chalice together and say,
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal with love,
to help with compassion, to bless with joy, to serve you, Spirit of freedom, in the fullness of community. I now invite you to rise as you are able. Let's see if I can do this without tripping again. And turn to hymn number 20, 20. And you can trust that number, because Kathleen gave it to me.
It's on the screen.
Yeah, I'll just
Oh,
do
yeah.
a short intro and we'll come in.
This is the time during the service when we pause and have a beloved community moment. And some of these will be repeated over periods of time, and I thought that I would come back to our LGBTQIA commitment because October is LGBTQIA History Month, and last Sunday was the Sunday closest to Coming Out Day, and this is Pride in some parts of the world, like in Orlando, where they cleaned up a bunch of mess and they still were able to have pride. So hear these words of beloved community commitment. Dakota Unitarian Universalist Church offers its commitment to the following statements of affirmation for the LGBTQIA+ community. We honor the lives of all people and equally affirm displays of caring and affection without regard for sexual orientation. We celebrate diversity by using inclusive language and content in worship. We incorporate an understanding of the experience of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer persons throughout all of our programs, including religious education. We affirm and celebrate lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer issues and history. We affirm marriage equality and conduct weddings for those of any combination of genders, gender identities, and orientations. We advocate for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people, promoting justice, freedom, and equality in the larger society. We speak out when the rights and dignity of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people are at stake. We recognize that there's always something more to learn and remain open to deepening our understanding about the lives of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, asexual, and queer people. This is our beloved community. Now this time of the service is when we light candles, if you are so moved to do so, and share a joy and or concern, or more than one. And at the end, I'll light a final candle for all those unspoken ones.
On Monday, we got married.
Concern. Spent the last few days with my mom. She has a cold and just memory issues, so there's a whole lot of, with the cold, adding to the memories and or loss of memory and stuff. So hopefully she will recover from the cold. Negative for COVID. Lungs were clear when we had that chest x-ray, so.
I have a joy that came in the mail a few days ago. My old friend Marty Winkler, who was a musician in the collective here decades ago, sent me from Georgia her new CD with a song on it that I wrote. Oh, wow. Such a blessing to have my words and thoughts touching people. And she said whenever they have performed it live, and she has a fabulous band, strings and everything, she said people have always cried. So I don't know if I should be happy to make people cry, but I am.
Let's be happy, yes.
You're touching them, not making them cry.
Yes.
Well, as some people already know, my wife is not here. She's homesick. She's been having some rash stuff going on, and we're trying to take care of it, but the antibiotics she's on right now are not making her feel so well. So she's... What? Oh.
Yes. We have a joy. I guess. What do we say?
Yeah. Definitely.
So I think you'll get it. But this is for Eric and Kelly. I need words.
We wish you roses in the spring, fledglings on the wing, fireflies that sing your name. We wish you flowers in the grass, memories that last, shelter from the passing rain. We wish you joy
That's a tough act to follow. Thank you so much. I'm going to light a candle. I don't talk about really deeply personal things an awful lot when I come up here. I usually talk about the farm or animals or chickens. But I wanted to just share a joy, continuing the spirit of joy. For the first time since I was in my 20s, I went to the doctor this week for my annual physical and checkup. Well, that's not the first time I did that. Sorry, annual. But for the first time during that visit, all of the test results that I received were all in normal range. My blood pressure is low. I don't know how that happened, but good low. And my glucose level, for the first time that I can remember, was like normal. So moving to Minnesota and having access to excellent health care in this magnificent state has saved my life, and I'm so glad to be able to share that with my community. That was after my doctor in Florida told me I might not live to see 65, so this is a great joy for me.
Farming might be helping too.
Oh yeah, it is. Chickens are
No,
helping.
it must be the chicken.
It must be.
Yeah, it's gotta be the chickens.
And now I'll light a final candle for all those joys and concerns that remain unspoken. May we know that whatever befalls us in life, we are held in the loving embrace of this community. And now we say together, for all these joys and concerns, both spoken and unspoken, we hold you in our hearts. Our reflective reading today is rather short, which I said before service might be an indication that my presentation is longer than normal, but it's hopefully not. This is from a colleague of mine. His name is Paul Lakeland, in a book he wrote called Constructive Theology. A static and unyielding divinity is truly incommensurate with the very fabric of existence and is not, in fact, supported by many biblical stories that indicate a relational God who weeps over a beloved people, a beloved earth, who anguishes and builds, who argues and responds, who watches over creation like a mother eagle, and who is as steadfast as a rock. He continues, salvation should be understood first and foremost as the appropriate relation of the human being, individually and collectively, to reality in its most comprehensive sense. So that was the beginning of the warning that I might be talking about God. And you know what they say about you churches. We do a lot of things, but we don't talk a lot about God. But today, because the presentation is about constructive theology and building our own theologies, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. Dr. Lakeland, who wrote that passage, is a professor at Emory Divinity School in Georgia, and is one of the huge one member of the huge collective of theologians that have transformed what we used to call systematic theology into a field which is now called constructive theology. Now, that's all real heady, but what I want to do is kind of bring it down to earth and help us understand what that means in the midst of a faith community such as ours. So, in the pop culture, you may have heard, if you haven't, it's out there, you can search for it. All of these people who make videos and share memes, all are centered around deconstruction. Deconstruction theologically of the Christian story, or deconstruction of the Jewish story, or whatever. Deconstruction has made it into pop culture. Now, deconstruction started in seminaries and rabbinical schools back in the 1950s and 60s, and what happens is it takes a while for those kinds of academic things to matriculate into society. It means somebody got their hands on a piece of theological discourse from the academy and read it and said, oh, that's a good idea, we can apply that in our own lives. Not unlike how back during the Great Awakening, people would say, now we have the highest literacy rate ever in the human race, and we can take the Bible and we can interpret it for ourselves. So I want to talk about what deconstruction is and how what I think is missing is the construction part or reconstruction part. Deconstruction is a method where we look back in history at different religious traditions, and I'm going to really focus on the Judeo-Christian tradition since that's really what this is about, but you can apply it to religions from all over the world, like the ancient Vedic scriptures that gave birth to Hinduism, and so forth and so on. But I'm going to stick with one because I could talk hours and hours about all the different religions, but just to keep us centered. It means looking back at things like the Bible and realizing something that Marcus Borg, you've heard me talk about him before, one of my professors who's now deceased, but he is one of the foremost biblical and Jesus scholars he was. And one of my favorite quotes is, "The Bible shows how our ancient ancestors saw things, not how God sees things." That quote in and of itself is a deconstructive quote. Meaning, if you've ever had to have a conversation with somebody who might not necessarily fit into the world of progressive theology, that one quote is the reason why you can't have, usually, a beneficial conversation with many people, because that takes us on a separate journey on looking at Scripture and saying, that means, to continue the deconstruction, that all those books in the Bible were written by people, go figure, and those people, just like us, had theological, philosophical, and political agendas. Doesn't make it bad. We all have. I mean, many of us are going through a lot of anxiety anticipating the election, right? So we have our own agendas, and I'm not calling that out as a negative thing. But the problem is that in pop culture, deconstruction is considered to be very critical, and they're trying to prove why religion is bad. That's how pop culture sees deconstruction. And that's where I said somebody got in their hands a piece of theological work, and they completely, went off into left field about what deconstruction is. But not to digress too much into that trajectory, what I would say to you then is that if we look at religious documents, not just Scripture, but even papal encyclicals, which most of us probably don't know an awful lot about, but, they forced us to learn that stuff in seminary, so I know a lot about papal encyclicals, which, if you didn't know, are just as authoritative as the Bible in the Roman Catholic tradition. But then they deny progressive revelation, which is a whole theological issue that I'll talk about a different time. That means that theologies change. Well, that's where the reconstruction comes from that I'll talk about in a second. But there's lots of things that we can deconstruct about facets of faith. Many of us were taught a completely different theology than what we might have or embrace right now. Also, many of us might have had a completely different theology yesterday than we do today. I think I've said it before, when I was in seminary, we made these t-shirts, "Approach with caution, deconstruction in process." And that is because we would literally go into a class, and thankful for United Theological Seminary for instilling this in me, and my Old Testament professor said, "Okay, just forget everything that you know." Well, we know how irrational that is to say, but she did it on purpose for shock value, and then started to tear into these Old Testament biblical narratives that I had learned about in little people's church with songs. Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho. And I brought that up before, and then she said, "There's not really a Jericho." I was like, what? I'm leaving seminary. That was the first week. But that's what seminaries have been doing for a while, is deconstructing. But what we miss a lot in pop culture in our lives is the reconstruction. So I go and I undo everything about the Christian faith, or I undo everything about my own personal faith, whatever collection of theologies it might be. So now what? What am I left to believe in? Well, that's why, and I'm perfectly good friends with lots and lots of atheists, but that's why we have a lot of people who espouse atheism with good reason, because they don't want to bother with the reconstruction. And mostly that's because they've been hurt by the church. Like my husband, Duran. He doesn't call himself an atheist, but he was hurt so badly by the Anglican Church in the Bahamas growing up that he just can't stomach trying to reform theological ideas for himself, other than, I believe there's a God and I believe we should be good people. But hey, that's a pretty good theology. I mean, I can live with that. Obviously, I do live with that. But reconstruction means that we've got to move beyond the so now what. And what that means is when we go through the process of trying to build on the foundation that was set for us, sometimes we have to nip away at the foundation and understand it, like the Marcus Borg quote. And we also must understand that Christianity itself, out of which it's not denying, without denying it, that's where Unitarian Universalism comes from the Judeo-Christian tradition. Christians have been building their own faith for millennia. And one of the things I did was a little research, even though I kind of thought I knew it, but it's been a while since I've been in seminary. So you've probably heard of the Council of Nicaea, when Emperor Constantine said, you know what? Of course, he had already said, we need to tolerate Christians, and then we need to accept Christians. And he said, but wait, what do you believe? You all believe something different. Sounds like Unitarian Universalism, which is great. But back then it didn't work for an emperor to try to control the people. He said, you leaders need to get together and decide what you believe so that we can all just get behind it. And so a collection of bishops, roughly called bishops back then, because this is before Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodox Christianity split. So we're talking about the year 325. That's a long time ago. Maybe that's when God was a child. I don't know. And they got together and decided some really big things that had not really been agreed upon. Now, think about that year, 325. That's roughly 300 years after this character of Jesus died. 300 years. And this is deconstruction and process, historical criticism. If you also look at life expectancy back then, which was 40 or 45, that means that over the course of those 300 years, you have many generations of people that had come and gone since the time that Jesus walked the earth. So there was undoubtedly an evolution of theology that was happening because, I mean, they didn't have TV or social media to say, hey, I believe this. Anybody out there believe this? Come and be a part, right? It's kind of how we do it today in the postmodern world. But no, they were evolving all over the ancient Near East, as we call it, and in parts of what is now Europe. What is also very interesting, and I want to point out when it comes to constructing our own theologies, is that, and this is a common misconception, at the Council of Nicaea in 325, they did not decide what books were in the Bible. They weren't even concerned about that. Why? Because belief was more important than written documents. Most likely, primarily because people were not literate in those languages even. But also because belief over the course of human history has been so much more important and has a longer shelf life than any written document. Most of scriptures from different religions were written down when people were threatened. Ah, there's a deconstructive comment. because that means that when they wrote them down, they were scared of being annihilated or being diminished in some way or being enslaved. So, for example, the Jews, when most of the Old Testament was written, were in exile in Babylon. And when the Vedic scriptures, I'm just throwing that because I talked about Hinduism a tad bit earlier, they were written whenever they were run out of their area by northern invaders from what is now China. So think about that. Almost every religious scripture was written when people were feeling at odds. Even Muhammad was writing the Quran because the tribal society had fallen apart in the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula. And he's like, there's got to be something better than this. And he traveled and learned what the Christians believe and what the Jews believe and what the pagans believed, and many others, Zoroastrians, and et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, well, this is what I believe. And he wrote it down. To survive. Now, what does that mean for us? Are all of us in survival mode right now? Well, it depends on the day. That's what I always say. We're all kind of, not all of us, but many of us live paycheck to paycheck, and that's just the great American way, the American dream. But we don't really, in this country, often live in survival mode, not like that. So how do we look at scriptures, how do we look at written documents, and how do we look at the things that we were taught, maybe, in the past, and make sense of it moving into the future? Now, if you're thinking I'm going to give you a step-by-step process, I'm not. This is more about asking questions, so you're kind of in a seminary class today. But I also want to say another deconstructive comment. The reason why people in most Western religions are so centered on written text, as opposed to the founding ancestors of Christianity, who were just really worried about whether Jesus was God or not. That's what the Council of Nicaea said. And you know what? They all decided, you know what? We don't have a religion if Jesus isn't God, so let's all decide that Jesus is God. 300 years after Jesus was there. And how many generations? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations later. Don't trust my numbers. Don't count. Something like that. Okay, that's a good. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always good to have a fellow teacher in the class. But I said class. You could tell I'm a teacher. Anyways, it's kind of a class. They were deciding that. And so Arius said, there's absolutely no way a human being can be God. He was one of the bishops of the Christian church who said, there's no way. Well, there's the birth of Unitarianism in the year 325. There we are. We found ourselves in history. The Universalist part comes later in the Council of Carthage, but, you know, come back to my class for that one. That's also when they decided what was in the Bible. And, you know, they couldn't possibly put a gospel from a woman, so the Gospel of Mary Magdalene was out. Because why would women have any kind of authority, right? I know. Sarcasm. Please don't jump on me. So, all of this deconstructive stuff really pushes us to search our own beliefs, to try to figure out, okay, where do we go in the future? How do we do this? Well, one of the most important things that I like to tell my students and any people that I am pastoring is that you don't have to know everything all at once, because your life will reveal lots of things. We learn by our experiences, by the events, and most importantly, we're on a search for meaning. Remember when I said searching was a good thing, you know, a good topic, because we're going to get there? We're all on a quest. Maybe it's not like, you know, the people and the characters in Canterbury Tales, which is one of my favorite books, some of which is not appropriate for children, but we've been on quests as human beings for generations, for millennia, to figure out some really important questions. Why are we here? How many people sit around and think about why are we here? Well, I mean, I do. And you probably have from time to time over your course of your life, but then, you know, life happens and we get distracted from those big questions, or we just want to avoid it altogether, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But that's what these theologians were doing back then at the Council of Nicaea. And even before that, that's what these writers of different religious documents were doing. They were trying to give the people an answer to why are we here? And then once they get that answer, then this is what you should do to be a good person. And then, of course, you know, it goes into a different whole leg of the journey where you have to join my church and you need to believe what I believe because we believe what's right and they're wrong. So that comes later. Started in 325. But Unitarians didn't disappear. They just went back and said, you know what? We'll just be quiet for a while and do our own thing. And they did. And I'm not telling you to be quiet. Don't ever say that because I'm not a very quiet person myself. But I want you to be gentle with yourselves as you continue to live and try to form meaning and ask continually the question of why are you here? What is your purpose in life? These are all existential questions that thoughtful people have engaged at least once in their lives. So, Unitarian Universalism offers us a very special opportunity for this kind of thing because, first of all, we all believe something a little different. We also allow people to change and grow. A little story, when I've talked about the first progressive church I joined where I encountered the first female pastor, the UCC church in Missouri, who eventually preached my ordination ceremony. Not sure if I told this part of the story, but talk about accepting people from growing and changing. One day, I showed up to church with orange hair. Now, I know colored hair nowadays is not that big of a deal, but this is in the 90s, so that was a big deal. Like, I came to church, and I was the music director. So here I'm standing in the middle of, you know, the chancel, which is where the choir was, and I've got this bright, I'm not talking about just dim orange hair. I'm talking about orange brighter than what that coat is. And the pastor came to me afterwards and said, I love your hair. And she said that behind her back she was crossing her fingers, but she wanted to affirm me. And that's what we do in this congregation. We affirm each other. We affirm each other's journeys. And so while I don't have a step-by-step process of how you can form your own theologies, because why? They're your theologies. Now, as a shameless plug, I can also say, as Kelly and I and others work on the religious education program that's unfolding as our congregation grows, if you want to learn more about that, come and talk to us, because we could form classes about that. We kind of have a little bit of education, and we could share that. But all I really want to say as far as what I believe that we should be doing is something that we're already doing, and that is, let's support each other and learn from each other. You've heard me talk about how when somebody comes into our midst, their story becomes a part of our story. And then we have a collective story that evolves. If somebody has questions, the best thing that this congregation does, and I've seen it happen, I've heard it happen, is that's really fascinating. Or, wow, I've never heard that before. Now, sometimes there's a little bit of, background in your brain like, where did that come from? But we say it in love. We think it in love. And so as we move forward and you ever want to learn more about the different theologies like liberation theology and process theology, because there are written down things about all of these different facets of things that you already believe. There are things that you have believed or known and you didn't know what it was called, and one day you wake up and somebody gives you a word for what you already knew, right? So that's kind of what it is. So that's what seminary is all about. Like, oh, I already knew about process theology. Wow, the earth is a living ecosystem. Well, yeah, I knew that. I didn't know it was called process theology, but now I do. So we can learn about all that stuff, but the moment we say, this is what I believe, and you should believe it because I'm right and you're wrong, that's not love. And that's not where this goes, I believe. And that's my opinion. I'm pretty sure most of you probably agree with that a little bit. But rather, come and join us. We're a collection of all kinds of people with all different backgrounds. We have our own struggles from day to day. We have our own loves, like chickens. We have, and Greenie, and others, right? And we can all come and be a part together as we build our theologies. Now, I will say in conclusion, getting there. In conclusion, as we build our individual theologies, this is kind of a self-help lesson, we also must think about, as we grow and change and move, we add services, we have movie night, we have, living, breathing, growing church has all kinds of things going on, and it could easily get overwhelming for people, especially if you're a part-time pastor, right? Because I try to be at everything. But we need to always be mindful of what our congregation's collective theology is that we can all get behind. And so far, so good. When I get up here and preach about love and that we should all love one another, nobody's really disagreed with me yet. So I think we have it. But we also have to constantly think about, what does that look like to truly love and accept others? And as I've asked before, and I'll end with this rhetorical question, I don't want to know the answer right now. What if, let's just say, a politician with a diametrically opposite philosophy of politics walks into this church and asks to be welcome? When we show that person love and acceptance, that's when we know we've gotten there. And I would struggle with a lot of that. I have struggled with a lot of that when that happens. So, moving forward, as we continue to think about these things, let's continue to love one another and let each other change. And even more importantly, let yourself change. May it be so. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I would love to invite at least beginning discussion that could be continued afterwards.
We do have treats.
Oh, and we do have treats, yeah. So.
I have a thought. Okay, so we got this postcard project that we're looking at, right? How do we present ourselves? All right? And on that little postcard, how are we going to do that? And I am always leery about proselytizing. Come and join us. Something you said about how we're all really different, and how do we tell the people in the postcard that we want to get to know them, that they're going to be fascinating, I think was the way you put it. And that would make me feel better about this postcard project, instead of saying, come and join us. You know, I mean, yes, that's what
You're
we're
one
asking
of
them
us.
to do. What?
You're one of us.
We don't want
Is
that.
Not the necessarily, even though we want them to feel like they belong, we don't want them to think that we assume that they think like us.
Come join us and expand our knowledge and something along those
I
lines.
like that, yeah.
Expand our theology.
Yep.
Let it join us and meld with us, not become us, but
Help us know more about the world, or whatever. Something
no
like
meld.
that.
We're
The
not
mind
that-
meld.
no melding. We are not the Borg. You will not be assimilated.
I love this stuff, so thank you, by the way. My thing was when I left Christianity, and I didn't want to think about anything about religion, I didn't want to have anything to do with religion, but when we found this congregation, and it was like a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I can think whatever I want or believe whatever I want to believe, and it's okay to be a part of your group. And it's like, yeah, it's like, wow. And so the fourth principle, that free and responsible search for truth and meaning, was like my shining star. And it took me like 20 years to go in the middle of the night, go, okay, you've had all this freedom now for 20 years. What are you going to do with it? What do you believe? You should probably figure that out or spend some time on that, you know?
I mean, maybe.
Yeah,
No requirement.
eventually. So, yeah.
Why are you Kathleen?
Why am I Kathleen? Because Kathy gave me this.
I meant for you to give it
Well, next sermon, search for identity.
Chuck, Bryan is giving you permission to change,
Yes.
Right.
as you know, and grow. Yeah.
I kind of had that already.
Okay.
Maybe a motivation.
Yes. Yes.
Nudge. Not a meld, but a nudge.
God, I love this group.
I just wanted to add an announcement. I tried to shorten my presentation a little bit just so we have a little time, but I just feel like I need to say this. You know, one of the reasons why in the Western world we've become so wrapped up in the written word is because of the United States Constitution. And I'm not demonizing the Constitution, but if you go read books by John Locke, the founding ancestors of the country took whole phrases from and plagiarized John Locke to build our Constitution. Nothing wrong with that either, I guess, because it wasn't illegal back then. But what that does to our society, and the same thing happened in Australia with their constitution, both ironically colonies of England, we become so fixated on written stuff that we transmit that fixation on to everything else. And so people want to have something written down that says this is the way that it is. And for a lot of people, that's what the Constitution is. I mean, I've heard people say that the United States Constitution was God-breathed. I didn't even know God breathed, but you know, it's okay. That's why you hear lots of arguments like, you know, our founding ancestors were Christian, but they were theists, really. And that's just another deconstructive point to say we shouldn't fixate ourselves on written stuff. Written word is great. I'm a teacher. I love the written word. I try to write a blog timely each week, except for this week. And I love the written word, but if we get caught up in just one way and saying, oh, I've got to have that written down so that I can feel good about it, that also diminishes our constructive theology, because there are some things that just can't be written down. Those moments. I was talking to somebody about a near-death experience that I had back when I was very young, and I said, there are things that I can't explain to you what happened during that time. I can't even write it down. And that's kind of where faith is built, or at least it starts to be built, or it's partially built in those moments of uncertainty and question that may never get resolved. Now be careful, I'll go into a second sermon. Well, let's do this. If we want to continue to talk about it, please stay after for treats, and we'll go from there. I'd love to invite you now to join us in our closing hymn, number 108. 108.
Kathy?
Yeah.
Come back here.
Okay.
Okay, so on this one, I'm just gonna do an introduction, and Suki's playing the melody on the first 3 verses, and Kathy's gonna sing a first verse, and, a fourth verse rather, and then we'll go back and sing the first verse again. Okay, so that's what's happening here.
Please rise as you are able.
That gives a new
play ball, I want to say after that. And so as we move forth from this space into the next, and whatever takes us, wherever it takes us, I invite us all to grow, change, and invite yourself to do that in an ongoing fashion. Why? Because we can change the world through our love. May it be so. Please be seated for the postlude if you can. Before we fellowship and treat, want to offer a word of gratitude to the Grinlins for allowing us to have this in this amazing space. So thank you so much.
And to Jim for always doing the tech and all that stuff.
Yes, thank you.
And all that stuff.
And a special thank you to our musicians always. It's wonderful. It just changes the nature of what we do in such good ways. And to hear original compositions by Kathleen.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, let's eat.
Well, I gotta cook the
My
apples.
parents do have to leave like soon to get on an airplane. But if no one else does, I will be here to make sure everything's fine.
Now where are you guys going?
You're going to Canada.
Oh, not too
You're gonna
far.
go look at the polar bears.
I was thinking, okay, we're going to Canada.
They're going on that.
We talked about the Constitution, and this isn't the Constitution, but for some reason my brain, when you started the chalice lighting and said, and we say together, I almost started to say, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Like, what am I, where did that come from?
Wait, what truth?